operations. So, you guys ready to go? Everybody good? Okay, so the three main, we're talking about row operations and row operations only. We're not talking about the column operations. So you have to remember that these are only, you can do these things to rows in a matrix. Okay, the first one. The first one is that you are allowed to swap. You're allowed to swap any two rows. Any two rows. So if you want to put the third row where the second row is, you can swap row 2 for row 3. You're allowed to swap them, right? Replace them. Like move this one down, move this one up. That's one thing you're allowed to do to a row. Second thing you're allowed to do is you're allowed to multiply any row by a non-zero real number. So if you, that's the second thing you can do. So let's say you want to take row 3 and you want to multiply it by 5. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to multiply any row, the entire row, by a non-zero real number. So you can swap a row. You can multiply any row by a non-zero real number. And then the third one, my favorite one, is you are allowed to add a multiple of a row to another row. Now that one seems a little abstract, but this one is actually the coolest one. That one is actually the coolest one, I think. So here are your three main row operations that you can do on matrices. The first one's pretty basic. You can just swap any two rows that you want. The second one is also pretty straightforward. You can multiply any row you want by a non-zero real number. And the third one is the coolest one. It says you can multiply a row by any non-zero real number and then add that row to another row and create a new row for itself. So that one's the most complex. 4. Okay, here is the system of linear equations we have. And what we're going to do first is we're going to put this system into an augmented matrix. So go ahead right now and put this system into an augmented matrix. And we'll check back in just 1 second. Hopefully everyone has the same thing. So from yesterday, take that skill we did yesterday and turn this system. Okay, anybody done? Yeah? Okay, anybody shout out for me, what's the augmented matrix that you came up with? 4. Yep. -3. 11. Correct. 3. 2. 4. All right, awesome. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a little map here. We're going to do A, B, and then C. These are the three things that we're going to do to this matrix here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to multiply 1/4 of row 1, and that's how I'm going to write it. Okay, we're going to multiply row 1 by a 4th. I'll tell you the reason why we're doing these things and the whole point of them in a little bit, but right now we're just practicing the row operations, okay? Then part B, after we've done part A, part B, we're going to say that row 2 is going to be -3 times row 1 plus row 2. So I'm giving you a little map here of what we're going to do. And then C, the third thing we're going to do is we're going to say row 2 is going to be 4/17 of row 2. Oh, wait a minute. What did I do here? Yeah, row 2. Okay? So basically multiply row 2 by 4/17. I didn't have to write it like that. So that's what we're going to do in a second, and you'll see why in a minute, okay? So part A, we're going to multiply everything in row 1 by a quarter. Why would I do that? Does anybody have see anything interesting? Why would I multiply that first row by a quarter? Anybody see anything? Yeah. There you go. You got it. So I'm going to go 1/4 of this row right here, and I'm going to write it just like that, 1/4 of row 1. And I'm going to place that new matrix down below. So if we multiply row 1 by a 4th, what do I get? What's my new row that I get? 1, -3/4, and then what? 11/4. Everybody okay with that part? Okay. Have I done anything to the second row? No. So I'm just going to rewrite it. 3, 2, 4. Okay? So now I've done part A. You with me so far still? Okay, now I'm going to do part B, but I'm going to base part B off the new matrix that I have after I've done everything to the first one. So here's part B. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do -3 times row 1, and then we're going to add it to row 2. Now, why would anybody do that? If I do -3 times the first row and then add it to the second row, what is that going to make this entry right here? Nope. 0. It's going to make it a 0, and that's going to be really important, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to multiply -3 times row 1, and then we're going to add that to row 2. Okay, this is kind of strange. I totally get it. But here's what we're going to do. Go with me here. So what's a -3 times 1? Let's do it in our heads. -3. What's a -3 plus a 3? 0. Okay, -3 plus 3 is 0, correct? So I'm not doing anything to the top row at all. That's going to stay the same. But I am doing something to the second row. This is an example of option number 3. I'm adding a multiple of a row to another row. That's what we're doing here. So I'm going to have a 0 here. And the reason is because I did -3 times 1 is -3, and -3 plus 3 gives me 0. So far, so good? Hello? Okay, good. Now, -3 times a -3/4. How much is that? That's 9/4. What's 9/4 plus 2? If you don't know, just go 9/4 plus 2. 9/4 plus 8/4 is 17/4. So that's what goes here, 17/4. Okay? So you can just do a little scratch work on the side if you need to. All right, we're still not done because we have to go over here. We have to do the last entry. What's a -3 times 11/4? -33/4, and we're going to add that to 4. So plus 4. So -33 over 4 plus 16 over 4, how much is that? -17 over 4, right? Okay, so -17 over 4. All right? All that is part B. We just did part B. Okay? You with me so far still? Okay? And I've only done 2 things, right? I've only done multiply a row by a non-zero number and add a multiple of a row to another row. Okay, lastly, I said that we were going to take row 2 and multiply it by 4/17. Why would I multiply that by 4/17? Yes, what is if I multiply this row by 4/17? Okay, here's what we're going to get. This is the cool part. Okay, the top part is not going to change, huh? 1, -3/4, and 11/4. Yeah? So far, so good? Okay, what's 4/17 times 0? 0. That doesn't happen. That doesn't change. What's 4/17 times 17/4? 1. Very good. And what's 4/17 times a -17/4? -1. Very good. All right. You guys have just discovered something very cool. This right here tells you something very, very important. Does anybody know what that tells you? Yes. Sam, say it again. Yes. This tells me that y has to be -1. How do I know that y has to be a -1? Because we have manipulated the matrix all the way down so to this row. This is what we're looking for here, right? We have no x term. We've eliminated the x variable, and we have isolated the y variable coefficient to a 1 at the same time. And this gives us an answer that the y value has to be -1. So back up here, we have now solved this and says y, well, I don't know why I'm using a highlighter, y has to be -1. That's a great question, right? How is this quicker? Well, this particular problem, this way is absolutely not quicker. However, when we have like 5x7s, this is going to be a lot quicker because you're going to solve for all of them at once. Yeah, absolutely. I totally get you. Like, this is not faster. This is not easier, right? This is an example of the basic way that we do these things, but we also have technology that's going to help us out too. So when we get into harder ones, this way is going to be way faster and way cooler. All right, so now that we know that y is -1, we got to go back and get x, right? If we wanted to, but we're just going to leave that one there as it is. All right? All right. 4 and 6. So what's the order of this matrix? What would it be? This would be a 3 by 4 matrix. You're right. It's got 3 rows. It's got 4 columns, so the order is a 3 by 4. Okay, here are the row operations I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do row 2 is going to be -2 times row 1 plus row 2. Then I'd like you to say that row 3 is going to be 3 times row 1 plus row 3. And then finally C, I'd like you to say that row 3 is going to be 15 times row 2 plus row 3. Okay, we're going to take this one step at a time. This right here is sort of the map. This is what I'd like you to do to get to where we're going to get to. So you can consider this a map. And we're going to do A, then B, and then C, and we're going to build off each one of them. So far so good? Z in this case, right? But right now we're just practicing with row operations. Okay, the first one is we're going to take row 2, and you're supposed to write it on the left-hand side here. So we're going to take row 2, it's going to be -2 times row 1 plus row 2. And I write it where I'm going to be replacing the row that I'm going to be replacing. So I'm not doing anything to row 1. So row 1 stays the same. 1, -3, 2, -6. However, I am going to do something to row 2. So here we go. Let's do -2 times row 1, and then we're going to add that to row 2. So what's -2 times 1? -2. What's a -2 plus 2? 0. That's a good thing. We want zeros there, okay? What's a -2 times a -3? +6. What's a +6 minus 5? 1. Very good. What's a -2 times 2? -4 plus 3. How much is that? -1. Very good. -2 times a -6. How much is that? 12. 12 minus 4. How much is that? 8. That's 8. Okay, good. Now we've just done the first thing. You guys go with that? Yep. Okay, good. And then I did nothing to the third row, correct? So I'm going to rewrite it. -3, -6, 4, and 6. So I've done nothing to the top row and the third row. Now we're going to move on to the second thing that we're being asked to do, which is row 3. So what we're going to be asked to do is take 3 times row 1 plus row 3. So 3 times row 1 plus row 3. Anybody know where I'm getting these from? Can you see where these are coming from? Like, notice I said -2 times row 1, and look at that number. And now I'm saying a 3, and look at that number. You guys see the difference? See what's going on here? Yeah. Okay, we're going to develop that skill in a little bit, but right now it's just practicing row operations. Okay, so we're going to take -3 times row 1 and then add it to row 3. Am I doing anything to the first or the second row? No, so I'm going to leave it alone right now. 1, -3, 2, -6, 0, 1, -1, 8, and here we go. 3 times 1? 3. 3 minus 3? 0. Very good. 3 times -3? 9. 9 minus 6? Isn't it negative 15? Okay, good. What's 3 times 2? 6. What's 6 plus 4? 10. Very good. Okay. What's 3 times a -6? -18. -18 plus 6? -12. Okay, you got to be able to add and subtract in these matrices, right? Otherwise, your life becomes a living hell if you can't add or subtract. Okay. Okay. So far, we've done the first. Now we've done the second thing. Okay. And then what am I being asked to do now in the third row here, or the third thing? Yeah, 15 times what? Times row 2, and then add that to row 3. And again, are you noticing that 15 is the opposite number of this? You guys see that? Okay, good. So that's all going to play to a role. So I'm going to write that down on the left-hand side. I'm going to do 15 times row 2 plus row 3. Okay. So I do 1, -3, 2, and a -6. 0, 1, -1, 8. And now I'm going to do 15 times row 2, and then add that to row 3. So this is going to be 0, because 15 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0. 15 times 1, remember I'm multiplying by row 2 now. What's 15 times 1? 15 minus 15? 0. Awesome. 15 times -1? Negative 15 plus 10. Negative 5, very good. 15 times 8. 120 plus, minus 12. Negative 108, right? 108. 108. Awesome. Okay. Now, check out something very important. Can anybody interpret that part for me that I've highlighted? You got it. This tells you that negative 5z equals 108. So that means that z has to be 108. Oh, dyslexia is fun. Oh my God, 108 divided by negative 5. All right, but that's not the important part yet. The important part was just being able to do the row operation. So we would stop right here. Okay. So for homework tonight, the skill that we want to get today is being able to manipulate matrices in the right way